Prior to this, I had never seen any of the Terrifier movies, but since Terrifier 3 is currently the biggest horror movie in theaters right now, I figured that I might as well give it a shot. Lucky for me, the first one is currently available on my much-beloved Tubi. However, I don't think I'll be continuing with this franchise, unless you guys want me to, I guess. If you love these movies, then good for you. I'm really not trying to say that you shouldn't like it. This is just my opinion about why I didn't like it, the first one at least. Full spoilers ahead, by the way.
Welcome back to the program. If you're just tuning in, I'm sitting here live with the sole survivor of the Miles County Massacre, which occurred exactly 1 year ago today. I've worked on the show for many years, and I've never sat across from someone who has a story to tell quite like yours. Thank you again for taking the time to sit down and speak with me. It's my pleasure.
Right away, the movie put a bad taste in my mouth by starting in a way that I felt was legitimately just mean. A victim of Art the Clown is being interviewed on TV, and her face is revealed to be heavily disfigured by his brutal attack on her. The victim mentions how painful it is for her to know that her appearance is scary to children, and even that it makes her wish she was dead. We then cut to the interviewer backstage talking on her phone about how freaky and scary it was to even be in the same room with this victim.
Oh my god, I thought she was going to attack me. My heart was pounding the entire time.
How she was so brave to even sit across the desk from her, since she felt like the victim was going to jump out and attack her. Of course, I was like, well, that's a horribly messed up thing to say. Imagine watching this as someone who could relate to the victim in any way. You're already painfully aware of the notion that your appearance is frightening to some people, and then here this bitch is just shamefully reinforcing that harmful narrative. That someone who looks different on the outside must also be an actual freak and an actual monster on the inside. In this scene, the cinematography and the score was making it seem like the interviewer was about to get snuck up on and killed. So I thought, well, okay, maybe that's kind of the point. It's one of those things where we don't feel as bad for someone who's about to get killed in a slasher movie because the film has shown us that they're a pretty awful person. I thought Art the Clown was about to jump out and go nuts on her. But no, it's the disfigured victim who jumps out of the shadows and violently murders the interviewer instead. So now I'm asking, well, okay, movie, what the hell was that? Is the movie actually trying to convey that the interviewer was somehow correct to have this cruel prejudice?
Huh?
What kind of message is that? I'm not someone with a physical disability, and I acknowledge that I'm not the right person to be making this criticism. Maybe it's also fair to say that I'm being oversensitive or that I'm thinking too hard about something that isn't meant to be thought that hard about. I probably am. I could hardly focus during the next 10 to 15 minutes of the film because I was still trying to wrap my head around what just happened with that introduction. I was thinking way too hard about topics like morality and artistic intention within filmmaking. Topics which are incredibly important but can also be incredibly annoying. Especially for fans of horror, or action, or some darker dramas as well. Because these topics often devolve into a lot of pearl clutching from a lot of people who don't understand that a film is not necessarily endorsing every single unseemly thing it shows on screen. I'm trying my best to call upon the powers of my media literacy brain and give this film a fair shot. It's important to look at both the text and the subtext here. What's being explicitly shown in the scene, but also what's the filmmaker's intention in showing it to us in this way? My issue is not with the interviewer saying these things. There can easily be characters who say and do even worse things without the movie being harmful in some way. My issue is with the film seemingly showing us that the interviewer is justified to believe what she does. There are probably three main interpretations that can be had in situations like this. Number one, the film is not aware of the harmful implication of the scene. Number two, the film is aware of the harmful implication but doesn't care. Number three, the film is aware, but it's trying to get us to really question and think about what we're seeing. Interpretation number 1 and 2 are the least charitable from the viewer's perspective. If I say number 1, that the film is not aware, then what I'm insinuating is that this is a dumb movie, and possibly that I keep wanting to say Sergio Leone. If I say number 1, that the film is not aware, then kind of what I'm insinuating is that this is a dumb movie and that Damien Leone is a dumb filmmaker. If I go with number 2, then I'm suggesting that this is a mean movie and that Damien Leone is a mean filmmaker. Number 3 is the only one that gives the benefit of the doubt. It's possible that Terrifier falls into category number 3, but I'm having a little bit of trouble seeing that. Maybe you can open my eyes with some enlightening argument in the comments, but I have to just be honest here and say that as the movie went on, my opinion increasingly solidified that this is just not a very smart movie. And by the way, that's fine. Not every movie has to be like super clever or deep or interesting. There are plenty of movies that I enjoy thoroughly that I can completely acknowledge are very dumb. But since I've taken it upon myself to use this channel to analyze and take a closer look at films, I can't talk about Terrifier without acknowledging that this is how I feel about it. For now, we'll move on to the remainder of Terrifier, since I can acknowledge that I'm probably fixating way too much on this one scene. But the problem is, I think this movie is pretty forgettable, and that first scene was the only thing that really stuck out to me. And the only reason it sticks out to me is just because I'm surprised that nobody in the year 2016 who was working on this film stopped and said, hey, I think this is a little fucked up. Maybe we shouldn't put this in the movie. So again, if you love this film, I'm really not trying to upset you, but I'll now explain my thoughts about why I felt it was so forgettable and underwhelming. I want to make it clear that I fully understand and embrace the idea that sometimes a film can exist not for the strength of the story or the characters, but just because it's an excuse for some fun action and or gore. But the problem with Terrifier is that it doesn't do that either. In my opinion. Everybody always brings up the scene where the blonde girl gets sawed in half. But other than that, what other kill in this movie was remotely unique or stylized or inventive? Art the Clown just bonks his victims on the head or runs over them with a car most of the time. Especially if you're gonna have a slasher with a theme? What are you doing with that theme? If he was just a garden variety serial killer, it would be slightly more forgivable for the kills to be so generic. But he's not. He's a scary clown. Based on the marketing for these movies, it seems like the whole shtick is the scary clown thing. So why even make him a scary clown if you're just gonna do nothing with that premise? My favorite moment in the entire movie, and genuinely the only thing that I thought was pretty great, was the moment when Art unexpectedly pulls out the gun. And that's just because that made me laugh. I think the reason that it made me laugh is because it seemed like such an extreme example of the movie just totally giving up on the theme. Like, it was so lazy and uncreative that it kind of came back around to the point of being, like, kind of delightful and wacky. I did not expect Art to just be like, bang bang, out of nowhere like that. There's some suspension of disbelief that's required in most slasher movies, because we as the audience know in the back of our minds that this would all be over very quickly if the killer just pulled out a gun. But we have to put that out of our minds because that would interfere with the whole point of the movie. Because what would be the fun of that? It'd be over too quickly and too unceremoniously, so we have to accept that we're typically not going to see a gun in a slasher movie. So I guess points for subverting my expectations with that one. But that's still pretty weak praise if the only credit that I can give to Terrifier is just that I was amused for this one little moment. Especially when that was amusement that I got because, as I said, it's so not fun that it actually surprisingly becomes a little fun for a second. I have a few other issues with the whole scary clown thing. For one, it makes me roll my eyes a little bit at Damien Leone. If you look at this dude's filmography, it's pretty clear that he took this Art the Clown character and just really ran with it. He's made this character his bread and butter. It seems like he'll just keep making content with this character until people stop giving him money. I think it's a little lame to act like Leone is the mastermind behind this beloved horror franchise when that franchise is centered around such an unoriginal nothing character. And I know that's probably not fair for me to say when I've only seen Terrifier 1. But all I'm saying is that I avoided watching these movies up to this point for one big reason, and watching this movie only reinforced that reason in my mind. And that reason is that it's just a scary clown. That's even worse when I feel like nothing exciting was done with that concept. I feel like this movie could be nearly identical if you just took the clown makeup off of him. Except you wouldn't want to do that because the clown makeup is the only thing that makes this movie remotely identifiable. To me, that's a problem. I feel it's a pretty good indicator that this entire character and perhaps entire franchise is pretty pointless. I'm not saying that every kill needs to involve like big shoes and flowers that squirt water or anything like that, but nothing's even done with it thematically, like exploring this archetype of the fool. Literally, what is the point of him being a clown? On the topic of the kills in this movie, I should point out that I'm actually pretty squeamish and I have to look away a lot whenever I see something that grosses me out too bad. I don't know why the hell I watch and enjoy the movies that I do when this is the case, but whatever. Part of the reason I haven't seen any of the Terrifier movies up to this point is because I've heard that they're nothing but ridiculously brutal gore. I'm not the type of person that's gonna brag, oh, don't be a pussy, it's not even that bad regarding movie gore. I think that's super annoying, and there's nothing wrong with you if you prefer not to see that kind of stuff. But all I'm saying is that I didn't feel the need to look away from the screen once during this movie. I believe that's because it never felt real to me. Seeing a naked woman hung up by her ankles and cut in half with a chainsaw should, theoretically, be far more upsetting than seeing someone cut themselves on accident while shaving or something. If I were able to fully pretend that what I'm seeing on screen is real, then of course that would be horrific. However, I never felt particularly convinced by anything that I was seeing in Terrifier. I'm not saying that the makeup and effects were bad by any means, because actually a lot of it was pretty technically impressive. I think the reason it all felt so artificial and ineffective has more to do with the fact that I just didn't give a shit about what was happening, and I had zero sense of investment in these characters as real people. That's a matter of taste, of course, but to me, I don't understand why some movies do this thing where it's like the movie wants you to dislike and be annoyed by all of the characters. The two characters that we spend the most time with are the two girls with names that I don't remember because I don't care. And to me, it seems so obvious that the movie itself was resentful of these two girls. The whole time, it seemed like the movie was saying, look at these dumb sluts, aren't they obnoxious? Why do that with the heroines of your story? Obviously, this was more the case with the blonde girl than with the brunette girl, but then it was like the whole personality of the brunette was just that she was less annoying than the blonde. That's not a character trait. Spoiler alert, they both die anyways. I noticed that there are 3 women with brown hair in the film, like the victim at the beginning, who we know will be the sole survivor of these attacks. So I think there was some attempt here to drop in a few red herrings and misdirections. You think it's going to be the main brunette girl, but then she dies, so then you think it might be the crazy lady, but then she dies, so then you realize it's going to be the main brunette girl's sister, but then she dies. Except, whoops, she's not actually dead. The movie just wanted to make you think that she was dead momentarily for no real reason. The movie loves to just introduce characters purely for the sake of getting killed off, and again, usually those kills aren't even memorable anyways. There's the bald exterminator guy, but then the even more egregious example is the guy who the exterminator knows or works with or something. He calls him, and then this acquaintance comes to the building just to be on screen for a few seconds before Art kills him. All of it is just so pointless. All of it feels especially pointless because this is one of those films that also adds a frame narrative at the beginning that mostly spoils the ending for us. We already know that everybody dies except this one final girl, and that even Art dies himself. If you're going to include that ending spoiling frame narrative, that immediately takes away a lot of the tension and stakes. But that could still work if it's all in service of setting up an expectation that's then subverted in some interesting way. That doesn't happen though, of course. I was so sure that I had figured out the ending and there would be a little bit of a twist. My theory was that Art would take one of the victims and then put his mask on them, and then he would mangle his own face. The police would assume that Art the Clown is dead and then rush the one surviving victim to the hospital. There were several clues that made me think that this would happen. We never hear Art talk at all, so who knows, perhaps his voice is much closer to the voice we hear in the interview than we would have expected. We see him wearing the breasts of one of his victims, perhaps foreshadowing this gender-bending appropriation of his victims' bodies. And finally, oh my fucking god, that would make the whole disability-shaming, mean-spirited bullshit I ranted about at the beginning a lot more understandable. Now I know what you're thinking, would this ending really make sense? Nope. The answer is no. It wouldn't. There are plenty of plot holes and logical inconsistencies you could point out here, but my argument is that my idea for an ending does not make any less sense than what actually happens. The way the movie actually ends is that Art runs over the sister character, starts eating her face despite no previous mention of cannibalism, and then when the police come barging in, he shoots himself in the head.
Do it! No, no, no!
I guess that Art is a supernatural entity, even though that was also never properly established before this point, because when the coroner unzips the body bag, a perfectly unharmed Art leaps out and attacks. And that's the end of the movie. So let me know, did I massively miss the point with all of this? I wanted to try a shorter, more casual review about a movie that I don't have strong feelings about. But I'm wondering if this was still enjoyable, or if you would prefer for me to stick to my deep dives about movies that I'm obsessed with. Again, if you like these movies, that's awesome. I'm really not trying to make anyone upset. It just wasn't for me, but I also completely acknowledge that I've only seen one movie out of this entire franchise, and I wasn't even watching it that closely, mostly because I was disinterested. So this video is certainly not like rage bait by any means, but I fully anticipate that there will be plenty of things that I got wrong that I welcome you to correct me on. Just try to be nice about it, please. I'll hopefully have my part 2 video for The Substance out fairly soon, but I made the mistake of possibly overcomplicating that project and putting it on too much of a pedestal. A very classic me thing to do. So I needed to take a break from writing that and just do a quick little meh video. Hopefully you still enjoyed it though. Happy spooky season to all of you seeing this. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!